Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Wednesday and welcome to Journey Through the Tarot. Today we're discussing the Nine of Swords. This comes from the Housewife's Tarot by Paul Keppel and Jude Buffum. So first impressions, we have quite the array of very sharp, pointy objects on this card. We have knives, scissors, hedge trimmers, and a rather alarming picture of Grandma wielding a butcher knife. Hardly a scene of comfort. I don't feel very happy or warm and fuzzy about this one. And unlike other images in this deck, which present us with a scene or kind of a composite image, this is instead a series of framed pictures. There's something that's almost disjointed about it. And so some things are being connected that maybe they shouldn't, but they're being forced to come together, or if it's just this repository, this gallery of all the things that make a person feel uneasy. And I do feel uneasy when I look at this. Maybe it's because I'm clumsy. I'm left-handed. The world is backwards. So I tend to have little stumblings and disasters from time to time. And looking at all of these knives floating around in the frames, it does give me a sense of nervousness. So that's what I get from the mood of this card. So if we look at the booklet, it gives us three key words: paranoia, delusion, apprehension. And certainly I think when we think of those keywords and we look at the image, it's clear that this image is meant to evoke those sorts of feelings. Now let's look at what the description reads. It says, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself. Though you fret over coffee stains on the love seat and detect disapproval from your mother-in-law, don't worry that pretty little head of yours. You suspect the worst, but it's probably all in your mind, and you are working yourself into a tizzy for nothing. Even when your problems are real, you tend to blow them out of proportion. Sometimes your apprehension is worse than the outcome you dread." So very interesting. And if you're familiar with other tarot decks, you'll see how this particular Nine of Swords deviates a little bit more from the traditional interpretation. In most other decks, this is described as the nightmare card. And certainly the author's interpretations in those other decks certainly mirrors that nightmare. But this particular deck, the authors went a slightly different direction. It was talking about how our fears are sometimes more illusion than they are actuality. So we might keep that in mind when it does pop up in a reading. So speaking of a reading, let's think about some possibilities to take into consideration. The first that I would really think of is that the querent is suffering from massive anxiety, and this anxiety is quite likely distorting their perceptions. And so they're not really seeing things as they are seeing their fears made manifest, and everything that happens is feeding into this narrative of fear within their minds. And of course, this would affect their ability to find comfort in anything that anyone says. So if you get the feeling that this is the case, there will be a need to be tactful when you suggest that perhaps not everything is as bad as it seems. The querent is in all probability going to be hypersensitive to anything that might be construed as criticism. And yes, as silly as it might seem to those of us outside, telling people that perhaps their feelings are not matching reality, it can be seen as criticism. It can even be seen as an attack. And when we're doing a reading, we'll need to try not to walk into that particular minefield, because that isn't the time to address that particular form of hypersensitivity. It's our job to help them see a way to get past it. So suggest taking time for self-care and also allowing other people in their circle to actually shoulder their own responsibilities without the querent doing their work for them. This would be particularly apt if you find that you are doing a reading for a parent who might have gotten into the habit of just taking care of everything, whether or not that it's really their job anymore, whether or not other people are capable of carrying out their responsibilities that they should be carrying out, and just getting things done for the sake of it. So that could be something to keep in mind if you are doing a reading for a parent. Now, a second thing I would think and consider is that the querent might be in a situation where they just need to rip off the Band-Aid. And that's the only way they're going to discover that things are going to be okay, they will be okay, life will go on. This is a time for them to be brave and to take action in spite of their feelings. All too often, people wait around for their feelings to change before they take action. But sometimes it is taking action that actually leads to improved feelings, and certainly taking action is required to have an improved outcome. So try to emphasize what the querent has to gain by taking that action, so they won't focus so much on what they could possibly lose. Third thing you might keep in mind is that the problems the querent faces could be very, very real. But cowering before those problems is not going to help them. And that we might advise them that sometimes it's better just to face it, take what comes, even if it's unpleasant in the short term, and just get the situation over and done with. And sometimes that's just the nature of how unfair life is, but it is a reality. We aren't always going to be in ideal circumstances or have all possible options or have an ideal outcome. That just isn't a realistic expectation. And sometimes if things just kind of suck, you just need to get through it, get it over with, so you can move on to the next chapter without having the previous situation hanging over your head. So that's what I get out of this particular card. Let me know what you think, either in the comments below, or better yet, join us on Gilded. There's a link to join us in the description box. Our server name is called Blackbird's Brew. You are very welcome to join us there. So if you want to talk tarot, paganism, witchcraft, anything having to do with our world, that is definitely the place for that. We have lots of different channels for you to have all kinds of discussions and to swap information and just, pick other people's brains. So I hope you will join us soon. But for now, bye-bye.